everyone, I'm Lexi.
And I am Brandon.
And we are AllAboard Gamer.
That's right. We are a channel bringing you board game stuff. Board game stuff. Just anything board games. We like it. We want to talk to you about it. And it's fun. What are we doing today, Lex?
Today we're reviewing one of my favorite games, especially at 2 players. It's Dice Command from Ejected Planet.
Yeah, Dice Command.
Really like it.
This is a really cool game. Spoiler, we really like this one.
Yes.
You just said it was one of your favorites. It was on our top 100s.
Yes.
Both of ours.
Absolutely. I forget where it's at.
I forget where it was. I should have too.
It's really good. It plays 2 to 4 players, and I think you're going to take us through how to play it.
Yeah, and then we're going to come back up here, and we're going to tell you what we think about it.
Sounds good.
All right there, folks. I have a 2-player setup here with blue and red. And just a basic setup. Pardon my voice, I'm a little bit under the weather as I'm filming the how to play. But basically you're just going to set it up where each player has a barrack, which is basically the lids and the bottoms of the components, the component trays that come in the box. There are 4 of those. And every player is going to pick a color, either red, blue, green, or black. And you're going to take these 5 dice, and these are going to be in your barracks. They're going to be available to use. And then you're going to have 5 dice out here in your reserve, and that's going to be for both players. Now, this is a mini expansion for the Kickstarter. It's called the Special Operations deck. Basically, this gives each player a variable power. So it's very simple instructions. You give 2 to each player, then they pick one. So when you reveal your facility from these tiles, each player gets 2 of those as well, picks one, and then that becomes the 2 facilities in the game, and the rest are put back in the box. You're going to do the same thing with the special operations. So for example, this one here says immediately after rolling, you may re-roll 1 unit. So you can try to get a better roll on your unit. So they do different things. You get a little power for the entire game, and that's that. So you can play with those special operation cards or not. You're also going to shuffle this tactical advantage deck of cards, and then on the bottom, you're going to put the ceasefire card face up. So that way you know when it's revealed, you have the ceasefire. Because the game can turn into a stalemate every now and then if players are very well matched. And that's a way to end the game without it going prematurely too long. This is the primary side for the 2-player game. If you're going to play a team game, which is 4 players, you're going to need these team cards. Again, I'll leave this for you to discover. It's really not that difficult, but you have black and red teaming up against blue and green, and you get these cards, and then you basically just add this board, and now you have 4 facilities, but each team, so blue, say blue and green is on this side, and black and red is on this side. You're basically doing the same thing, but now there's 4 facilities in play instead of the original 2. If you want to play the 3-player or 4-player free-for-all, you've got to flip this over, and you'll see it's a little bit tougher to read, but you notice that it changes everything. The triangle is actually so in a 3-player game, you would basically use these 3 here. In a 4-player game, free-for-all, each person's going to the opposite side, basically. So it's a pretty neat way to turn what I would consider a 2-player game into a 4-player game, but you can do it, and the team mode is actually quite fun. Keep this yellow D6. This also comes in the box. This is in case a card here, like the sniper and some other cards, will have you rolling this D6, or you can use whatever other D6 you wish next to the tactics cards. And then each player is going to have in their own player color 4 cards for their command base, which is headquarters, financing, conscription, and research and development. And you want them on their purple upgrade sides, which is their non-upgraded side. You have to pay the research token here in the corners in order to flip the card over. You can put the sabotage tokens, the credits or money, the research tokens, and the mines in a common supply. You're going to pick the first player. They're going to get this sweet metal dog tag. Now, I don't know if that's in the retail edition, but this is the Kickstarter edition, and it's a nice metal dog tag, which is pretty cool. And that's basically it for the setup. You're ready to play. All right, so on a player's turn, there's going to be 6 phases. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is prepare. So that would be any start of turn effect. So for example, if I did have a unit in a later turn on this 2 space to get news press, as you can see here, then that is when I would gain this credit, and you can throw it in your barrack. The second phase is roll. You're going to roll all the units in your barracks. Now at the start of the game, there's going to be 5. But later turns may not always be 5. Okay, that was actually a pretty decent roll. And now I assign. Phase 3 is to assign. So now I'm taking the dice from here and I'm playing them on my cards to be able to do things out here. So for example, if I want to go into my headquarters, which is here, I have a spot here, 2 spots here for deploy on the non-upgraded side, and I have a spot for advance, and then I have a spot for a research token to flip this over, which as you can see here gives me a special ability at the top for some cost, but I have 2 deploys and 2 advances, okay? So for now, let's just pretend we're over on the non-upgraded side because you would be there at the beginning of the game. Financing. If you assign a die here, you're gonna get $1. Okay, assign units to generate credits. It says it right there on the card. All the cards are the same between players. And then for your second dollar, you have to put 2 dice here of any number. So here is where I would, since the icon is circle, here I would conscript a unit. I'd spend my money and I would get 1 unit so right now I'm just assigning, okay? So I'm assigning research and credits and units to my cards. If I want another unit, I gotta spend $2. And on the back side, of course, it's $1 for the first 3 units, which is really less expensive. And then your 4th one is $2, okay? So that's your upgraded side. R&D is pretty fun. You need 5 research tokens on this card before you can even flip it over and upgrade it, but it has an atomic warfare ability. But you need 2 dice here to get 1 research token every turn, period. Same thing on the back here. Except at the start of the turn, I can exchange a research token to conscript a unit or to gain money. So you're trading research for money, which is pretty cool, but it's still going to cost you 2 units to get a research token, but the atomic warfare is cheaper. It's 3 research tokens instead of 5. So that's what you're doing. So the way units work is, whoops, that was a 5. I'm playing around with the dice and messing up. 1s, 2s, and 3s are light infantry. Light infantry are faster, but they don't have as much strength because the strength is the number of the die. 4s, 5s, and 6s are heavy units. Heavy units are slower, but they're obviously more powerful. They have more strength, they have more health for that reason, okay? Tanks are when you roll doubles, and I happen to roll 2 6s here. So if I wanted to, that's the strongest unit that can be out on the board is a double stacked 6. So I either deploy them as 2 separate heavy 6s, or I can, at this point, because there's a double, I can stack them and make a 12 strength tank. And then I would put it over here on my deploy. I can't just put it out on the field. I got to use a deployment slot. You only have 2 to start the game. So let's say I want a little bit of a faster unit out there too. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy that. So there's all my deploys. I got 2 more dice left, okay? Because 2 of them were used to stack. That's the other thing too. 2 of the dice are used to stack and make the tank. So you have less dice. So here maybe I'll say I want to get $1. And let's say this one I'm going to use to advance my units, one of my units, okay? And I also want to conscript a unit, so I'll put $1 here. And let's go ahead and save on. I'll save these $2, and that's what my turn will be. So that is the assign phase, and you get these nice little player aids too that help you with all this. Now in phase 4, you resolve those assigned actions in any order that you choose. So for example, I can spend this credit, put it back in the supply. I can take one from my reserve and put it in my barracks. You don't have to roll it because on my next turn during the roll phase, that's going to get rolled. You just take it and put it in there. So I've got an extra person in my barracks to be used on the next turn. Let's say under financing, I remove that one. I put that one back into my barracks and I gain $1. I put that in my barracks from financing. Now I'm going to deploy the units that I have over here. So the way this is broken up is you have a front line, okay, and then you have behind enemy lines. This is where you're trying to get on your opponent's side. First player to get 4 units on this side of their enemy line, in the dark squares here, will win the game. Unless it goes, of course, to a time game, and then the ceasefire, and then there's some end game conditions. This is the middle section. Okay, and this is the central area. This is where the facilities are located. And then, so every deployment is going to be on your side always. There's nothing that breaks that rule. You're never deploying back here on your enemy side. It just would not be fair. So I can pick anywhere along here. So I'm going to take my tank and I'm going to just go ahead and put it right in the middle. And then I'm going to deploy my 3. And let's say I want to go here to this left flank. Okay, maybe I'm trying to stack this side. And you got to watch your opponent. You make sure you know what's up. Now, this 5 is just an advance, so the 5 doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. So I spend that, and I can advance either one of these based on the normal advancement rules. Remember I said that light units, unless a facility gives you, or a card gives you the ability to do so, and there are some cards and facilities that break that rule. Typically, you can only move forward or diagonal forward. You cannot move sideways, lateral, or backwards. Light units can move 2 spaces in that fashion. Tanks, artillery, and the heavy units, so if this heavy unit was here, this 5 by itself, they can only move 1 space, okay? So let's say because my tank is kind of slow, I'm going to go ahead and advance my tank with that 5 that I just spent. So I'm going to go ahead and go 1 right up the middle like that, okay? I am done. I have spent my dice. Dice that are not deployed go here back into your barracks. It's the same with these tactics cards, which I haven't gotten into yet, but these cards are available publicly for everybody. So I didn't use them this time. They're here. I didn't use them. That's fine. So now I've resolved, and now phase 5 is I can advance optionally all of my deployed units. This is in addition to any advance that I pay for with dice on my headquarters. So keep that in mind. It's the same thing you're doing, but it's 2 different timings. This one acts on the card in the resolve phase. This one is just a global advance, and it is optional. You don't have to move your units. You can hang back and do nothing. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just go 1, 2, and I'm going to go 1 with my tank. So you now, I started back here, but with this advance and this advance, I'm able to move up and get closer to the middle of the field. And then we refresh. So if no tactical advantage cards were used, the right one falls off, and these slide down, and a new one comes out, and it is now Lexi's turn. Combat works when a unit moves into the same space as another unit. Very simple. And there's no other dice to roll. Basically, it is math. This 12 strength will kill this 5 heavy infantry. However, the 5 does 5 damage to this tank. So now this 6 on top becomes a 1. So now I'm still a tank, even though it started off with a double. Just because the double's broken doesn't mean it's no longer a tank. It's just the top die, but this one is dead, and it goes to the reserve, not the barracks. When units fall in battle, they go into the reserve. So you have to conscript them and pay money to get them back into your barracks to be used out here on the field. That's essentially how it works with combat. Now, same thing here. Say on the next turn, Lexi didn't like that very much, and she now tries to kill my tank. Well, my 7 is obviously going to die, but my 7 is going to turn this now into a 5. Basic math, like this, which is now a not a tank. Not a tank at all, but a heavy 5 unit, okay? That's essentially how combat works. It's very, very easy. And like I said, I'm not going to go over every single rule. I've looked at mines. I've looked at these cards. It's really that simple. And basically, you're trying to run back here and get units behind enemy lines. Once you have 4, you win. The atomic warfare and the R&D department, I've actually won that way. Place 2 reserve units behind enemy front lines. So if you pay 5 research tokens, I can take 2 as long as I have them in my reserve and just put them behind Lexi's front lines automatically and then flip the card over. And if I can do that again with 3 tokens, I instantly win. You can win with atomic warfare. So you can go that route if you would like. So that leads into then talking about the sabotage tokens, because these are the only take that element in the game, and they're quite fun. On your headquarters, if you flip it over to its upgraded side, you notice you have a special ability up here that costs 2 credits. What this does is you are able to then, during your turn, pay $2 during the assign phase, and you can take one of these sabotage tokens, and you can sabotage a unit or credit assignment space in their base. So that's any of the credit in conscription and any unit assignment. So I can, for example, if I see Lexi going for research and she's going to try to unleash atomic warfare, I might need to sabotage her to slow her down, because she needs 2 dice here to get a research token. If I sabotage one of these spots, she can't go there with 2 units and get a research token. That's basically it. Let's go ahead and back up top, and we'll tell you what we think about it.
All right. Well, thanks for showing us how to play.
You're welcome.
Yay. It's actually a really easy game to pick up on the flow of things, and so yeah.
And I did show you the 2-player is easier.
Yeah, that's typically what we play it at.
The 3-player is the same thing. It's just it's a 3-way game. The 4-player, you can either play free for all, which you're kind of doing the same thing. You're still going kind of across. You still have to target the person across from you. So it plays like the 2-player game, but just with 4 people. The team mode is where it differs a little bit, which we're going to talk about that. So I just showed you the 2-player because it's not a full how to play video. This is a review. So, all right. So we're going to be using our gamers review system, gameplay aesthetics, mechanisms, ease of play, replayability, and strategy. If you didn't catch all that, play me back in slow motion.
All right. So the first one then, G, is gameplay. So what do you think? What do you
think?
Well, no. This is game arc.
Game arc and player agency. Player agency is the ability for a player to manipulate the game world. The board state in a board game. In a video game, of course, you're interacting with a virtual world, but a board game, you're interacting with the board mainly, and then the game arc is like, does the game ramp up? Does it have that kind of effect, or is the tension rising as you play?
Yeah.
What do you think?
This one's kind of interesting because it is more like a tug of war while you're playing, and it's a lot of back and forth. So as far as a huge arc, no, I don't really think it has one, but the tension does build because it's that constant back and forth and what's going to happen, and the board state is kind of changing with the cards that are out, and then the manipulation of those 2 tiles that you have with the 2 spots,
the facility tiles.
Yeah. So I think that there is a game arc, but sometimes it felt like we never reached it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about that too.
Definitely.
But it's there, but it's more of a hill.
Yeah.
I'd say that.
I describe it as a roller coaster.
Okay.
I think the game arc, because it's a tug of war, you'll have moments where you're overwhelming your opponent. You got a lot of units out there, and you got income, and you got research tokens, and you've upgraded some of your command center, your base. And you just feel, oh, that's so good. But then your opponent can pull a big move, wipe out a bunch of your units, and now you're kind of down here, and you need to build yourself back up again and get those units out of your reserve and back into your barracks and then back out onto the board. And there is a lot of that. And because you start at the same spot, in your front line, it can look like a very long distance trying to get your dice down to the end there. And then when you get wiped out because of a bad move, you're like, ooh. So yes, I agree. I think
roller coaster is
what
fair.
I think it is. Yeah. It's like you crank. That first hill in a roller coaster is always like the tense one because you're just watching yourself get higher up off the ground. But then when you drop, it's got that big rush, and then you kind of come down, and then you kind of go up again, and you're kind of slow, and you're anticipating, and then down you go. I think this game arc is very roller coaster. Which isn't. I'm not saying that is a bad thing.
No,
but it does create like weird moments where you're like, oh man, that was bad.
And you can miss things. You can definitely miss things and do bad moves in this, and it's kind of chess-like in that way, the movement and everything. But I think that go ahead. I think that is really cool, that up and down, because it keeps you super engaged.
It does.
So
you have to react. It's not boring. No, it's not. And so I think I wrote in my notes that the game arc is positive most of the time. Yeah. But sometimes it isn't. For example, I put in here, you read it in the game arc, and we'll talk about this with other categories, but you might come to a stalemate if you have 2 equally skilled. Like, I think you and I are pretty equally matched. We really are. I think you're just as good, if not better, at this game than I am.
I miss things more than you, but yeah, okay.
At times. But at the same time, we're equally matched, and a lot of times it's difficult because it's constantly tug, and then you're just waiting for that deck to run out and get to the ceasefire.
Right.
And then it turns into some kind of arbitrary tiebreak, which doesn't feel climactic sometimes. It doesn't.
The last time that we played that we reached that point, I was like, oh, I won. And I was
and you weren't happy about it.
That didn't feel, that's not a good win.
She won by having the most units in the middle of the board, in the middle of the zone, that center zone that I showed you on the how to play. And she just happened to have more units there. And it's like, and she won. And it's like, okay. That's a very big drop. It kind of it loses the tension. So,
but it didn't make me love it any less.
Right.
It really didn't.
We're saying that as a minor criticism, but it's not like this huge thing that was a deal breaker in a negative way.
Yeah.
And then again, the player agency. There's lots of ways to affect the game world. Those cards, you always say it. As soon as I go for one of those cards, you're like, oh, I forgot about those tactical advantage cards.
I always forget.
You have to look at those.
You
have to.
You do.
Those, the one game, in fact, we were just playing before we filmed, and we're back in the groove, and a sniper came out.
I know, and I missed it.
And you missed the sniper.
It's the glare from the lights.
Yes,
I wasn't reading the card.
I think there's tons of agency in this one.
Oh, yes.
Lots
we
of
could
agency.
continue talking about each one of the cards that come out, too.
Right,
so, yeah.
right. So we are giving this a positive, this category for gameplay, taking those two things into consideration, taking our minor criticism into play. It's still a positive for us.
Absolutely.
So definitely still a positive. All right, so the next category is aesthetics. What do you think?
It's clean. I would say that.
Wow.
I think it's a clean design aesthetically. I think that it pulls off the military style in a very cute and not gruesome way. I mean, it's dice, so but I like that in your barracks you have the little beds in there and everything. Everything is very clear.
Yes.
Your little boards that you have, your little cards where you can place your dice to do different things.
Yep.
Very clear. Everything is extremely clear. I like the card layout too. Again, it's very clear what you need to do. The text is good. It's very legible.
Yep.
I don't think that the rules are convoluted in this game either. So having cards that are easy to read on the fly when it's so back and forth is very important. And not too complicated. Yeah, I would say that.
True.
So I do like the design. It's not like super duper pretty or anything, but it's really well done.
I mean, it's not a huge box, folks. No. I mean, what they've packed in here, though, like you said, that's a great. I didn't put that in my notes. That's a great word, clean. I do like it. How about the fact that when your cards are not upgraded, you got that big purple upgrade banner, and it stands out. It contrasts the color, so it's that one's not upgraded yet. Like it's visual. And then when you flip it over, you get the different color banner and there's stars to let you know that it's like, hey, this is upgraded and there's another ability. And things are always trying to catch your attention, but in very subtle ways. Yeah, so I agree.
I like it.
Now, my only I have to nitpick somewhere, right? It is a dice. It's a dice game, so the war theme is there, and it's very. It's handled well, but this is not a hyper thematic type of. No. It's just a tug of war across like a skirmish game. But the fact that they use dice and not miniatures says something about the tone of the game. However, I would have liked to see, like, for the number 6. The 6 pip on each of the dice. I would have liked to have seen like a rifle instead, or a helmet, a military helmet, or even that, or a tank, or even that banner, the Dice Command banner with the star and the shield. Something,
or a star,
just to make it look, just to make the dice look a little bit military when you roll a 6. However, given you have to stack units and you're turning them around, if you have a symbol like that, I could see that might be distracting when you're looking at the board. The dice are very colorful, very clear. They're actually very nice dice. Very nice dice.
Yes.
So that's just a little tiny.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's just an idea. It's not even a nip. It's not even a criticism. We're giving this a positive for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
For what it is, for what the production. I love the beach side of the board a lot better. I will say that.
I like the beach too.
It's more colorful. It just has those blues and tans that I really like the combination personally. The other side of the board is a little bit more drab. It's just basically olive green and different shades of green.
It still works.
It works. It does. But it's not nearly as nice as the other side. I do prefer.
All about the dice.
Well, it is. It's Dice Command, in fact. But anyway, no, the aesthetics, we're giving that a positive. It's a weaker positive. This isn't like you said, it's not a big,
it's not
overblown. It's not an overblown production, but for what it is, I think what you said, the cleanness, every component has even the storage boxes are your dice trays.
I know, I love that.
That's really cool. Yeah. So very good.
All right, so the next category up in our list is mechanisms. It is our mechanisms. So obviously you're doing dice placement, dice rolling. It's a tug of war.
Tug of war is the main thing.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Grid movement. is technically a mechanism because you are moving on a grid. You can't just move anywhere you want.
Right.
You're not measuring with rulers. This isn't that kind of war game, which is nice. It's simple. It's grid movement.
Very simple.
Yeah. And it plays well at all player counts for the most part. We'll talk about that. There's some caveats to that. Just one.
I've only played it at 2.
Yeah, one major caveat at 3, but at 2 and 4 it really sings. Yeah. So what else? As far as mechanics, we tend to look at it. You said the design is clean. What do you think about the mechanisms? Are they just kind of grinding together? They bouncing where you don't really or do you think everything's very smooth?
No, I think everything is smooth because so you roll on your turn, and you went over this in the how to play, but you roll your dice and then you assign everything. You can use your dice for different things on the cards in front of you. If you're going to get credits with some of your dice, if you're going to deploy them or advance them, or if you want to try to get those research tokens. So, I mean, it's like worker placement in a way. So you're putting that there. That works completely fine. So you have to decide how you're going to use all of your resources on your turn. And then the movement of the dice is really cool. And I thought that it was cool how yes, they could have used miniatures and they could have done all of this stuff, but I like the fact that it's very easy to understand your strength of your unit when it's out there because of the pips. And the movement is a little bit different depending on if it's light or heavy.
If it's light, if it's a 1, 2, or a 3, it's a light. It can move 2 spaces if you want.
Yeah.
If it's heavy, 4, 5, or 6, it can move 1. If it's an armored division, which is the tax tank. If it's the stacked tank, it moves only 1 space.
The tax tank. That was a funny one.
Be quiet out there. Be quiet.
No, but I like that because then whenever you come together and you have a skirmish and you fight, and then it's very easy. You just go, oh, you had 12 and I had 8, so now I just take mine down to 4, and
you have
you're
a single
eliminated.
heavy unit to 4.
Yeah,
the tank is destroyed.
I like that. It's not overly complicated or anything
it's really
like
not.
that. So I think the mechanisms are absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Very light. They didn't bloat it with more things than they needed to.
They could have. A lot of games like this do that. If they would have had minis, then they would have needed something else to do movement. Instead, the dice themselves, as soon as you roll them in your barracks, boom.
Yep.
Do I stack the doubles to make a tank division? Or do I leave them separate and put them out there? The light units can move faster, but they die easier. Light infantry also cannot harm an armored tank. So if your opponent has 2 or 3 tanks, now they only have so many dice, but if you have 2 tanks out there, is pretty much the max I've ever seen is 2 tanks. Then you have to be careful. You got to keep your light infantry away from them because they can't hurt them, even though they themselves, the light infantry, will die. So it's very, very smooth. It's snappy. Turns are so, there's really no AP. You only have so many spots to assign your dice. You either deploy them, advance them, you either get research, money, or conscription. And that's with your money tokens. Then you research, and then if you want, you can move, but you don't have to. You can play a kind of a turtling kind of defensive game and just kind of sit back. You don't have to. That's the other thing. You're not forced to advance your units.
Yep.
And that's really interesting. And so the game can get long.
Yeah.
But what I love is the timer. If you have 2 players, one turtling and the other one maybe tries to turtle and it's real slow, it doesn't matter. Every turn, if there's no tactics cards used, the advantage cards, one drops off and you're getting closer to that ceasefire. So you have a built-in timer. That's cool. The mechanisms all work so well. And I think
completely agree
from a
with
thematic standpoint, it works. Even though it's dice, it's a little abstracted because you're not looking at miniatures. You don't have to. I think that's a great choice.
Yep.
I think what they did was great. And it keeps the package nice and tight.
It does.
And it didn't have, like you said, it didn't add any bloat, unnecessary stuff.
Yep. Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple. I wrote this, and I wanted to mention this. Dice Command proves that you don't need minis to have a thematic experience.
Especially a war type game.
Yeah.
You don't need
No, because you have these facilities and you have these tactic advantage cards, and then you have your headquarters, and it makes sense what you're doing, and you're doing it all with dice. It's so neat. It's so neat.
It's cool.
This is definitely a stronger positive in the area of mechanisms.
I think so too.
Tyler, you and the other designers, who is this? We didn't even say who this was designed by. Tyler Holman and Sam Crystal. I apologize. We usually say that at the beginning. In fact,
I'm
I'll have to
sorry,
make
that's
a note.
my fault.
Yeah, Yeah, when we introduced the game, I always want to mention the designers. So Tyler, Sam, excellent job. Hats off. You did a great job of putting these mechanics that you don't typically see in a war game, tug of war and stuff. You did a great job. All right, so ease of play. You already mentioned the rule book. You actually mentioned it in aesthetics. You mentioned that the rule book is very easy, and it is. Holy cow! This is an 8-page rule book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an 8-page rule book, and yeah, it's a lot of text, but there are some pictures. A couple of pages are for setup diagrams for the 2, 3, and 4 player, and then the free for all versus the team mode for 4 player. But like, it's simple. This is an easy game to learn. It's an easy game to teach.
This is one of those games where I feel like when you're reading the rules, that it has to be visual for you to pick up what's happening. Because I remember when we sat down and you first read me the rules, I was like, wait, what? And I was confused for some reason. But when you actually start playing it, you're like, oh my goodness,
because it is
this
abstracted
is so
with the dice. It's abstracted with the dice. Yeah.
Yep. So it's very easy to show somebody a turn in this, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. Do you have a start of turn ability?
I got it.
Then go. Then you do your roll phase. Roll everything that's in your barracks. If it's in your reserves, you can't roll it. You have to script to get them in there. Roll them, and then you assign them, and then you resolve, and then you can advance if you want, and then you refresh.
That's it.
I mean, your turns are so snappy, but you still have to put your brain in it. This is not a mindless game.
No.
So the ease of play, I think it's easy to teach and to learn, but it is a strategic game. You have to really pay attention. You're going to get wiped out pretty quick, and so it's really, really cool. It's a very tight design for how straightforward the rules are, I think. So we're giving this another positive.
All right, so our next category is replayability. So is Dice Command replayable, or is it the same thing every time you play it? What were you doing?
I was trying to make an R backwards with my fingers.
Okay.
Replayability. Replayability is probably where. But see, even then, like I was going over this in my mind. I'm like, I would play this multiple times in a row with you if you asked me to.
Well, isn't it funny? Like, this is one of those games where you're like, how about Dice Command? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, there's no hesitation.
You never do that with these kinds of themes.
I never. No. I know, because Memoir 44, themes. I'm like.
If I say Memoir 44, you're not like, yeah. But I say Dice Command.
I'm like, yes.
Yep.
And I don't know why. But is it replayable? I think that it is. Yes, you're doing the same thing. It's not like there's a campaign in this or something that is going to keep it fresh. That might be cool in the future, but I don't. Yeah.
Campaign?
But
maybe in a different theater of war.
It's
might be
always
nice.
going to be a different situation, because what you do and how strong your units are depends on how you roll your dice. And also, I love the cards that come out. So some of them are repeats, but they're different enough as you're playing that when they come out in different ways, that it is a very different game depending on the order of how these things.
And if you have the dice to spend on them, or the money, some of them
are super expensive.
Some of them take money.
Yeah.
So you have to have different combinations of dice. And
this has felt different.
It has.
When we've played it.
Yep.
We've had games that have gone really long.
To the ceasefire.
With the ceasefire.
We had games where I nuked you.
Where he, completely blew me out of the water.
Which I like that atomic thing, because you're like, well, wouldn't that wipe out the board? Well, no. What they've done is they've said, you just get 2 units back there, because basically that's what it is. The atomic warfare cleared a path for you to get your units back there, but it's expensive, and it takes time to build that up. And you can be sabotaged with those sabotage tokens.
I was sabotaging
you were trying to sabotage me a lot to keep me, but that's what you should do. You need to react to your opponent. But then that kept you from being able to do a lot of the things you wanted to do.
Right. So I think it is very replayable in that regard, but you are basically doing the same thing. It's a tug of war game. So.
And where I see it taking the biggest ding for me is just the higher player counts. I think if this was just a 2-player game, it would be just as well. There's so much in that. So the replay, that's why we're going to give this a neutral, because I think that the replayability, you're right. I think every board game eventually, it's like, well, this is what the board game does. It gets samey. Like every board game is samey. Okay.
to a degree.
To a degree,
But then, like, what keeps it fresh? I don't think expansions are needed here to keep it fresh. I think those facility tiles, the tactic advantage cards, and that team play. 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2 is really where it sings. If you want to play it free for all, you can definitely have fun with it, but it's definitely going to take a lot longer. It just will. Because now you're dealing with a big mishmash in the middle of the field with all these dice, people getting wiped out. Now, this one could argue that might make the game quicker. It might, depending on your group. So I can't speak generally for everybody. You're going to have a different experience. But we're going to give this one a neutral. Because there are some pros and cons that we saw in the replayability. But I will say this. If we were just ranking this on a 2-player only game, I think the replayability would be a positive.
Yeah, I always want to play it.
Yeah,
so.
you do. Yeah.
It's
because you always want to try to beat the snot out of me.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's back and forth. Fun. It's fun.
Yep.
All right, so our last category is strategic engagement. And this game has a lot of strategy in it, I think. With just planning, well, what you're doing depends on how you roll your dice. Yep. Also, the facility tiles and the other cards that are coming out there for you to utilize. So, and you're moving across Chess-like on this board back and forth. So I think that it's all strategy.
Yeah.
Like there's luck with the rolling of the dice, but you can mitigate it depending on how you use it and what the other person is trying to do. You can definitely thump them. So.
Yeah, and sometimes, when it comes to the strategy, it can be such a tight game strategy-wise that if you make, like you said, if you make one mistake, if you miss something,
you're done.
And your opponent can see it and capitalize, just like chess.
Yep.
And you can capitalize on it, then you're toast. You know, but you're never out of it because no one can run 4 units down to the end of the board in a normal game.
Unless somebody's not even
Unless
paying
someone's
attention.
not even really playing you and just win like in a few turns. It just doesn't happen. In fact, the game we were just starting to play, we only played like a half a game. I ran one down pretty quick.
Yeah, you did.
But then you tighten up the board. You packed up some units and they were pretty strong and you kept rolling 6s and 5s. And yeah, they're moving slower, but they're tough to go up against when you're just running light units down to the end of the battle. So I had to readjust. So you adjusted to me and then I adjusted to you. So the strategy's always in flux, back and forth. It's really neat.
It is really
Battlefield changes very dramatically. I remember the one game remember that big thing of mines down and it created a corridor where it's like you didn't want to land on them because you knew they were going to blow up and kill your units.
And then there's, I forget what the other one is, where it's like, it's literally everything around you that you can blow up and you can like sacrifice your own dudes so that you can kill a bunch of the enemy.
Yeah, so it's really got some neat stuff. Now this is a positive for sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely some strategy in here, so no question. No, this is a very strategic game and it's just, I think at 2 it's even more strategic. At 3 or 4 it's a lot more chaotic. There's more chaos.
I would be interested to play it.
And it becomes less about strategy and more just about sometimes getting away from people and stuff, which is, I guess, part of the strategy too, but I find that it's a lot more chaotic.
I run towards war.
Yeah, and when a game is chaotic, I feel like I have less control over my own strategic decisions.
That's true.
Because my decisions basically become, this is what I have to do, instead of what I want to do to try to trick my opponents. I have to do this because they just wiped out 4 of my units and I got to get more out on the board. So it becomes less strategic and more chaotic at 3 and 4 in the free-for-all mode. At Versus, it sings. It just sings at the Versus. So that's great.
Love it.
Yep. All right, so our final score and our thoughts, the way that we calculate based on game weight. This is definitely not a heavy game. I'd say it's probably like a light medium because of the strategy and things like that, especially at higher player counts. But we're giving this an 8.6 out of 10. It's scored. Now, we do, you want to say, what's the point? What's an 8.6? Why not an 8.5 like other people? Okay, we do a 100-point scale. So because we do a 100-point scale, we're able to fine-tune the review to a little bit more of a granular level. So in our system, it scored like an 86 point something. There were some decimal points. So what we do is we round those decimal points off, and then we basically make it a multiple of 10. And so this was an 86.13 or something like that out of 100 on our scale. So it's an 8.6 out of 10, which is a silver cog award.
Yeah,
it got really close to the golden cog. This is a good game.
It really is. I don't think that a lot of people have heard of it.
Nope.
And we need to make a difference with that, because I think this
would be on my list of underrated games for sure.
I think that it was on some list that we did.
It might have been.
I forget. But
we need to feature it some more because it definitely deserves it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it definitely deserves it. And even if you don't, I mean, tell them, even if you don't like the war theme, you're not particularly into, there's always war themes. There's always World War II.
There is, but this makes sense. And I think that it's not just, dudes on a map like fighting, like it's dice command, and you're commanding your little dice to get out there and kick some booty. And I really enjoy it. I really, really do. And I don't know why, because I usually theme definitely, I weigh it in my decision of how much I like a game or I want to play a game. And this one's just fun. And I don't even really care about the theme.
This one goes against everything that you are, it seems like. This one goes against, it's not a heavy Euro, it's not intensely thematic, although the theme is there. And I think what they've done with the dice makes it a little bit thematic in that sense. The light units and the heavy units, you could have used minis for that, but they chose to use dice. And it works because as soon as you roll them, boom, you see.
See, like, and I also, I feel like, I know this isn't an abstract game, but I would rather sit and play this than Onitama. Like, I really feel that way. And we just played Cairn.
I can't. From Matago, that's
we just played that a little while ago, and that's like kind of how I feel when I'm playing this game. Except this one feels deeper.
It is. It's definitely deeper than that one.
Yeah, I think that's why I like it so much.
Yep. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and if you can, just if you like what we're doing here, just please like, subscribe, share the video, comment, all of that stuff really helps. Yeah, all that stuff. But just you being here to watch this and getting entertainment out of it is quite enough for us. Okay, so honestly, that's quite enough. But if you want to help us in all those other ways, we do appreciate it. So that's it. You want to take us out?
Yeah. Thanks for coming. All aboard. Bye. Okay, well that was, fairly simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very simple game. So what did you show them?
What? I showed them how to play it. Let's just keep rolling. I showed them how to play it. That's what I did.
All right, well, thanks, Brandon. That was pretty simple. Thanks for showing us how to play that.
Cut. That's making the blooper reel there. That's definitely going to be our intro. All right. Anyway, go ahead.
Lord.
I love it.
Okay. My face is red. Hold on, let me calm down.